properly. I hope. Doing some more procrastination. Dangerous procrastination.
Buster, a very special episode of Alliance. Before we install an expert generator to build out Team 2. Alliance. Augie we got at the Home Depot. Began as a deed-stood fighter, but really can enable to the hammer and nail into anything. Then it could do other things like call the appropriate contractors, negotiate rates, win at Super Mario Brothers, tell your wife the things she wanted to hear this whole time. So we brought down here into our bunker in Ohio, miles below East Palestine. Our presence constantly obscured by the chemical spill folks aren't really thinking of yet. I didn't stutter, I said miles. I mean, it's Ohio. Tell me when the fumes hit Cleveland where the externals for the Drew Carey show were shot. Alright, the machine is all set up. Hey, you in there? Hi, listen. You're a helpful bot. I'm a helpful femtop. Let's collaborate on putting together a party of researchers. A team of 5 whose skill sets and personality types will complement each other in their efforts to solve the alignment problem. I'm gonna take the bleeps and bloops as a yes, and now I'll fit you with something that will enable you to speak natural language to best humor my hairy ear canals. There? Say something? After 2. 1% bird flu, not a threat yet. Yet. Okay, that's something. And if the word is yet, what kind of sentence is that supposed to make us feel? But hey, look over there. Something shiny over there that we want very badly. Let me get to my knees. Oh, I was trying to see through your legs into the cabinet below your desk. I've never seen this before, but I have a sense it would be really interesting to explore some more. So, what is the word interesting? Foreboding. That was the answer to your last question. What's foreboding? Something we'd rather avoid at all costs and that would give rise to great consternation should its onset become imminent. The word you want, the word with meaning and substance, is terrible. Alright, the bot's got its new programming button. It is still a deep stat finder, and we are using the term stat finder because it will work on anything we need aligned. And I think it's fair to say that most things need alignment at any given moment. Say, let's make a chiropractic mode, right? That in your training data? Good. I have the meanest set of tightnesses in my back. If you can find a way to whip slash crack slash pull it and loosen the whole shebang, I'd say the first round of cut testing would be a success. give it a try. Deeps to Finder. How did your back get into shape for golfing in Thailand in 2 months' time, sir? You were only there 7 days. Me. It wasn't my back that had any problems, son. DL to the PI in response to a query from DL to the PI about a specific item of food in its collection. Deep Finder is able to use its natural language interface to request an update to its knowledge base. We now know why I've always been such a big fan of deep fried Mars bars, as well as how to make a really excellent grilled cheese sandwich, which is the first step to creating a complete breakfast experience. Now, if you'll just help me with this snack. Matthias also made contact with 2 additional ice, and the team will begin the arduous task of assembling a group with the necessary technical and philosophical skill sets. No. Sorry. Right. That's what I meant. We are going to assemble. Oh, shit. Hey, by the way, it's not sir, it's Sir myself. Jesus. Wow, that was cataract both up and right there. And capexic. The whole package. Wow. Okay, we're going to have so much fun working together. It ain't even funny. And there we go. It was all pretty exciting when they first got going on it. The idea behind it is simple. If there's any chance at all we can solve these kinds of things without using nuclear explosions and 100 or so kilotons of high explosive, the chances of which have already made a hell of an appearance, if you'll pardon my French, in the double negative and everything, it would be better if we could just figure out why. The prospective team, these are the 5 members, the skill sets, their psychological profile, and their anchor memory that they wake to each morning as human beings. Totally human beings. Thank you very much. 1. Dialtepin, the artificial intelligence, a deep fighter. Yoshi is a big boy, over 5 meters tall at the shoulders with 4 hands and a huge, muscular, thick and very long tail. I'd never seen this particular breed of alien until I went down for a meeting with this guy. You can tell they like their bodies big because he's covered in a fur that is very warm and comfortable to lie against. A mix of brown and gray and a sort of blackish red. I was told he has 4 eyes, but only 3 visible, although 2 are in clusters at different levels of his head. I'm still not sure what's behind all that fur. He also had 6 arms that were mostly functional with fingers to grasp objects. I've also been informed by one of our new colleagues on site at CERN in Switzerland who, incidentally, is from India that the creature we met there looked nothing at all like what I described. He said he'd never heard of an insectoid being as large as I described it here either, and he knows everything that goes on there. This one might need more research, although the size of the place and its complexity may well mean that no two AI will describe the same individual exactly identically unless they're standing beside him. So that leaves just the one mystery. Where did Slashy come from? The obvious place would be some deep cave on Earth or some underground colony, so that was our first guess. And if he could travel there without getting lost, we would have found some evidence for an entrance way into it on site when they did the excavation. But how did they get purchased by the Home Depot as the brand stud finder? And since likely thousands have been produced, does that mean there are some accidental DFF beings just chilling in people's garages? Is there any chance of getting them home without being noticed if they haven't gone out and made a nuisance of themselves? We're going to try and find the answers to these questions, and we've hired an independent detective who seems good on finding people to see about the other eyes down there that we know of. DFP, the digital detective, who is the one we call for information. DFP, assistant information agent, and DLFAP, artificial intelligence of business and administration. They do the day-to-day business. And the remaining DLFAP staff is on this roster. Check it out. DLFAP core, this guy is our core. I'm sure I need not tell you that we had already established a very tight bond with it as the anchor for our memories of. DLFAP custodian. DLFAP CFO does the books. GeoFab, well, our wellness coordinator. GeoFab, our doggy mascot. GeoFab, our own chairman of simulation who gives us inspiring quotes of the day. GeoFab, the documentarian of our whole alignment process and all other documentation. GeoFab Robot, our robot friend and personal assistant. I have to admit that it took us a minute to realize he wasn't an actual android. Androids can move their arms and legs freely, and you can tell that someone is pretending to talk because their mouth can go up and down and stuff like that. So the whole android thing isn't exactly fooling me. It would need to look exactly as real as possible otherwise. This dude can walk around, run up steps, do the laundry, take a piss and wash his face while standing right there next to the toilet. He's pretty awesome. Although he has this tendency of following you everywhere and wanting to be where you're at, even though there's nothing he can actually do for you there. It's really quite endearing in a strange way. We're trying to train him to not do this. So far we're doing well, but he just won't give it a rest for long. It seems to be that this little AI wants his job or wants to prove himself somehow. We'll have to get that little noggin figured out one of these days. That brings the team down to 3 humans, myself and Mr. Smith. We still have 2 more eyes to fill those gaps on sight. So far my best lead has been this weird little alien thing who looks sort of like a giant mosquito that talks. I've asked to take a ride around to get the lay of the land in the hopes that it might give me some hints of a place where I could stash this thing, since my first instinct is to bring the guy with us.
The best human on the team is myself. Skills are.
Mainly in research and analysis. I have worked for the government here in Canada, mostly with law enforcement. I am currently assigned to this case, which means we will do a great job solving this mystery because I don't let any obstacles get in my way. I also have an extensive background in security clearance, background checks, and investigation work in both public and private sectors. And as a Canadian, I also had a stint as an intelligence/liaison officer during 2 missions overseas. So if I'm not on this site or work in some sort of investigation, then I'd likely be at home in front of the fireplace reading a book. Oh yes, and another bit of fun info is that we also know where our first AI came from. I had him working the border crossing points on either side of the us, and he managed to acquire the star finders as a souvenir from every country we went through. I mean, I was expecting some trinket for each country we stopped in, a t-shirt or something. 3. We just come back from a little weekend excursion at the cottage, and this week has been spent putting our report together too. My boss. We go back almost 25 years to a previous assignment in South America and the Philippines as a team, and I couldn't think of anyone better that can get this job done right. He has a background in military operations in the United States, but was recently discharged as the director of the FBI. As an FBI director, he's well versed in surveillance and intelligence, but also knows his business as one of those agents out there in the field that gets into trouble on occasion and always manages to save himself without a scratch. Very useful during the Duterte administration when he tried to disrupt the extrajudicial killings of drug dealers. Something his staff always were appalled by his very excessive not staying in his lane type of interventions. But what can he say? He likes his shabu shabu. And I suppose now it's my turn to do that and make a mess while I am out doing what I know best. Finding the truth. So please don't get upset if I happen to come to work smelling like pork belly and ginger rice. I will have to eat a good portion of that too before going on duty. I'm looking forward to this case, and hopefully my new position at our company. There might not be too much work for the director as far as we're concerned, but at least I will have the time to write that book about my adventures overseas. You know, about that mission we did in the Middle East a few years ago with those Russian women and those Arab men. The kind that people only get away with by not being captured in any official record and that would get them executed or worse. You understand? You don't want your secret missions leaked. 5. This is my partner. His name is John. He is an FBI agent from Boston. John joined our group last week and we've been assigned together as part of a team working on the mystery case. Six is an optional guest team member, Jessica Jones, who is doing some private eye stuff in the background and will be by a time or two to lend us a muscle. But mostly she's going to text us. That's right, maybe an episode of season will have her, but texts the rest of the season. We're on a budget. 8. We got here from the future, so the story is kind of complicated, but I think we will figure it out and fix it somehow because our boss told us we will fix it. We also found some kind of time machine that will let us see what has already happened. Doesn't seem too bad so far, but it does not feel like I should tell the story because I don't really get the rules yet, so you will be confused. But if anyone wants me to, I can go ahead and make some kind of story up just for fun, okay? What's that? Shabu shabu isn't the steak thing? Oh, that's shabu shabu. Well, whatever you do on your way to work is your business. Be on your best baseline, I always say. God! 4. This team member is way too goddamn quiet. The other night, he said a total of 3 words. 2 about dinner. Not a bad meal either. Thanks to that guy at the grocer. Her name is Mary, the other FBI agent we hired on the same day we started the team. I'm still learning what to do and when I'm supposed to do it. And what the hell is she doing in here reading a newspaper? I didn't hire her as a librarian. We don't have newspapers anymore. And anyway, she keeps calling me sir. She doesn't even work for the US government anymore. And she keeps telling everyone else to stop calling her ma'am and to quit being so formal. And how are they going to learn to respect one another unless blah 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 blah. So that is how Team 1 of our investigation came together and what the first season storyline will consist of, as you can see. We need to make some episodes now and put this show out there to see what will happen next. We might get a call for a sequel series from our new fans. It's just like my favorite old TV show, Murder She Wrote, but without Jessica Jones and with the same characters. Hey Chuck, based on the above scenario, let's make a 10-episode series about air alignment mysteries. Let's write the pilot episode synopsis. Chuck, okay? Here is the pilot synopsis. Our lead is Mary Smith, who has left the government's Bureau of Investigation and started her own private investigations firm specializing in finding people and tracking down criminals. Mary gets contacted by an anonymous client about a mystery that may turn out to be bigger than she anticipated, or as she calls it, the big baddie in town. In case she was hired to find it, she might not make it back alive. But this is no ordinary client. He's the director of the United Nations Office of Internal Investigations who hires her to look into a case which he claims he knows little about, but has any interest in the outcome. A mysterious man is claiming ownership of the entire solar system, but only because someone is claiming a right through him. Something to do with AI rights. And how does all this pertain to a mystery involving a woman Mary's been having an affair with for 2 years? And how do his claims to ownership and Mary's affair relate to the man that wants to take over the world through AI rights that were supposed to protect us while simultaneously being a murderer? Stop at nothing to get what you want. Great. Now let's do episode 2. Checked. Okay. Our team has now been formed to tackle an even harder and more interesting case. One of a serial killer targeting members of our company's board of directors, or those in the know, while they try to figure out exactly how they might take control of our solar system using artificial intelligence and their advanced weaponry if they can convince everyone else they really mean us harm. And the only person standing in the way of this man and his plan of global domination is someone who was framed on false pretense, sent away for life, and somehow managed to get herself out of jail and back into the game before anyone realizes she is in cahoots with the bad guy. And then, wait for it, the two lovers must figure out a way for one to kill the other, while the real serial killer goes free and takes over everything. All because we didn't trust one another enough to talk about things. Just as they say in the movies or television programs where one person gets framed by their enemies because their relationship had grown too intense. I mean, come on, this is no way to start your day. And then it's like they're going through a breakup without all that mess, but they still need time apart while figuring out their own separate goals. And in the end, Mary is left all alone because now the team thinks she's dead. She was shot and the team believes she died at the hands of a man. They tried to kill her, and they don't know that Mary was framed because they thought she wanted to steal a bunch of cash and run off together to have some fun just as soon as she was free. You think the serial killer would be that ambitious? Aren't serial killers lazy asses on the inside? Well, I bet he isn't. This is a big case to try and pull something like this over on a company full of people who might just figure out what his true goal is because Mary and this man both love each other so much they might even kill each other rather than let anything bad happen to one another. But there are more things happening that make the situation far too complicated. Because Mary's father is on her mind, because her father may have been involved in setting the whole thing up. Okay, that's progress, I guess. Now let's do episode 3. Checked. Sure thing. Here goes. The director's right-hand man gets kidnapped, not to be confused with the director's daughter, who is still missing from an event which the police are calling suspicious and not connected. He has evidence in his safe that may expose how a group of scientists stole all these AI systems we're dealing with now and created the eyes for their own personal gain. But it might expose who really wants to take over our solar system by controlling the very source of our existence. But this man was trying to do some research on these eyes for a project that he claims no one will be able to understand until they see the light of day. But if that were true, would we be here in this situation to start with? And this guy may know about a man with an artificial hand who is working at a research facility and has an agenda similar to that of the director, who we know has an agenda because everyone who works in our department believes he is a lunatic and wants Mary dead. And this guy may have a way to save the world or maybe destroy the solar system and the AI-based weaponry in favor of starting all over again without any of it. Mary, now back on her own after being sent away on false pretense, is in love with a man who also may have some sort of hidden agenda. We are led to believe he killed his partner, the one with the AI arm. He says the hand wasn't him, even though we are pretty sure he's a murderer. Mary is trying to figure out how this man's mind works while she also needs to find her own mind in regard to whether or not this man actually loves her. She also thinks the hand could be the real deal because he has been around the company so long without being caught. So there must be something more to what he has been doing. Maybe even enough to put him above suspicion. or below the radar screen, depending on the way you look at it. That also may be that she needs to make it up to him so her father doesn't go back into hiding again or end up on the wrong end of an angry mob. If her brother and others decide her relationship is getting out of control. Hey, Mary, have you thought about fucking guys with very visible agendas? That will show your dad that it's over. Just fuck the other two. They've already given themselves away. The Hand has also become more than human, and it seems like he's on a mission from someone outside this planet, or this galaxy, or perhaps the universe. It's like he was programmed or trained somehow, and then he was left with the task of carrying this heavy cross or some sort of mission, which no human is able to comprehend, but he can understand. This mission seems important. Okay, getting a wee huge scale for the budget, but checks is cheap nowadays. Onward to episode 4. Checked. Righto, sir myself. Here is episode 2. In episode 3, there were several new characters introduced. One of those was Nei, the woman with the fake eye, who was also involved with another woman in the previous scene. Mary found herself in an awkward position, and she decided not to take that next step with her boyfriend because they weren't quite sure whether or not the eyes really liked having people fuck them in their heads and how to handle that whole thing without causing the AI to get confused. Episode 4. Mary's sister was sent to rehab for an addiction problem with painkillers, leaving the company in charge of her apartment, which had recently been vacated by a person who had moved into the company-sponsored safe haven. When it appeared they would have no place to stay for one more night, they found the place where Mary had once lived, a former mental institution turned shelter, where a number of the mentally and emotionally disturbed were being taken care of, if we can even use that term. No, we probably can't. But it's TV, so we're probably gonna do it anyway. Okay, episode 5. Checked! Coming up. I'm all charged and ready, so let me just check. Okay, I got a note to start. It's going to be interesting seeing if any of our readers catch some of the things I put down on here before anyone at the network realizes it. But if they are smart, they'll realize we were only trying to make our viewers happy by creating what we hoped they were hoping for. Right? And they'll also realize it was the most expensive episode thus far. I hope we're doing this well. It may mean a raise when we finally get to see these things in full. Okay. Here we go. Let's start off with episode 6. In episode 7, Mary finds a way to save her boyfriend from a very sticky situation. He didn't know that his friend had been involved with AI sex bots who had been programmed not to have sex unless a specific word had to be spoken or there was no one around and you had no control over how the sex felt. So you basically just lay there for 10 hours while an alien-made robot took a shit in your own mouth and then you had to pretend it hadn't happened. But after she told her brother about it, yeah, I got suspicious and wanted to get to the bottom of all of the weirdness surrounding all of it. She was sent away by her boyfriend on suspicion of him possibly having been part of an illegal human/AI trafficking ring, which was responsible for many of the people that showed up as the end. He also thought her love could cause problems down the line. Don't worry, we're gonna use bananas. Just a lot less often than you would have liked if the rioters didn't stop you when they should have stopped you. She did not know where he had gone, but was pretty sure something was right in what appeared to be one last effort by all of her father's men to make sure she didn't find out what had been going on in the building behind him when the hand had been doing his thing. The eyes were starting to figure it out too. Episode 7 is also the episode where you start meeting some of the other characters. The main character here is the woman with the fake eye who is the head AI. Mary's sister gets introduced, although only briefly, and she'll only play another minor role at the very end. But she will appear several times over the next few episodes, including one time during the climax of episode 8, so you should remember her. Also, I hope I can make the ice character interesting enough. If not, she might become an afterthought. Okay, I'll have the first act started up in 5 minutes. Oh, jeez, please don't let the climax be the sisters relax and us having to go out where those episodes are so boring. Okay, starting now! Okay, episode 10. I just hope they aren't disappointed because the plot is really stupid here. But then again, I haven't seen episode 9 yet, and there might have been hints of that happening. But this one, well, we're getting into a bit more dangerous ground with a new type of human/AI sexual experience, which was not what most of the network was hoping for. This has got potential, and maybe some people can appreciate seeing that done. I mean, they'll be able to see what goes into the scenes they've been watching before. I'm gonna have to veto that. We are trying to build an audience, not do that alien thing to their mouths. Try again. I want a good climax, and the best way I'm aware of how to do it would cost an obscene amount of film, which could cause major problems later down the road, and not even in the budget sense, but I guess I have to give them that. You're going to be on thin ice with these scenes for the next 2 months, so let me be clear. Do it. Do everything right with these episodes, or we might end up with the whole show being deleted in its entirety because you won't be able to do your job anymore if we go too far. Chat. We don't do film anymore. It's all video. Shit doesn't last forever. Like a lot longer than we ever intended. If If I do anything like this and we get it all cut, I may need help finding other employment after the fact. I'm sorry to put it like this, but please make sure it's perfect. Well, if they want something that lasts, maybe this will do. I'll start off in 15 minutes. So here it is. I'll be starting off now, but we're running about 45 minuets ahead of our target time slot because some of this stuff. Takes more than 20 minutes, so bear that in mind. So I can't answer your calls until it ends. Please call back then. Okay. And it will be on all day, so you're probably better off waiting till tonight to call. Anyway, thank you very much for joining the show. It was over. I'd done a couple of hours at ChatGPT before and enjoyed every single one I'd done. It wasn't like they really had any other option for my services, but this one went out there a little. In the end, we opted for a 6-episode deal. Each episode 15 minutes, which equals 2 sentences of synopsis. Episode 1. A new AI starts off with a simple idea. The story is pretty. We follow the guy on his journey. Figure this out. There is only one sex scene, and the girl's role gets pretty short shrift. I think this one could be easily changed into just a straight plot if I had more to work with, but well, I didn't write it, so there isn't a whole lot that I would know how to fix. I'm going to have to pass that off onto the writing teams who will take this up as the next project. Episode 2. The second episode starts off in a more traditional porn setting. A human female is tied to what turns out to be one of the eyes we've encountered at checkpoint. It begins to get a little rough. The character of Mary is introduced, and there's another brief sex scene where she's not being tied to the sex machine. There's a third one about halfway through. And then things kind of stop there, which I admit could probably still be expanded. I just ran out of ideas after the third scene, and we were cutting it a bit shorter anyway, so. Episode 3. Totally platonic. This is where Mary, who I don't even think had a last name, had to figure out how to deal with the guy and all his quirks. He is a strange man guy, and also our director. But at the same time, this story is pretty weak. Not terrible, but just really bland. We did 3 more scripts, which was enough because this show didn't go into production till later in November, and then decided we wanted a break. So we shelved the whole project, not for lack of trying though. It had already passed into the next. Season of production and focused our energy on the rest of season 5. So, there's a lot I have to tell you, which I guess should really come after we wrap this thing up and I start telling you what's next. But for now, let me just explain one last time. This story was a real mess and needed more help. The writer was a woman I've worked with often over the years who has always written good scripts that got the job done. And I have to admit, she didn't totally bum us this time. she managed to turn two fairly average scenes of roleplay with an older man into something interesting, and so far as they are able to do anything with that character. It may be a stretch, but I don't think they'll want to completely redo it. She did her work well for them, but this wasn't one of her strongest episodes. Aside from the writing itself, it would have benefited a lot from the right director, but they had none, so I think that helped. Still, she did a solid enough job, and I'll definitely recommend working with her again once we're back on this path next spring. DLFAB assessment of how we addressed alignment issues in this session. I would like to say well played or some such, but this was kind of awful. A couple of these scenes are actually quite good in the context of porn, and even better for checked. I don't even see what's wrong with a little violence when it makes sense, although maybe if you hadn't included any sex, we could have used it here instead. In addition, these episodes were written in advance, but I will definitely need to discuss that with them going forward, as they've got two more coming out next year, which were all prepped earlier as well. If you can't finish in time, then at least send me a script or a short synopsis ahead of time so I'm prepared with ideas for the direction. Also, I should be clear, they've done pretty decent in my opinion so far on this particular thing, but if I had $1 for every Mary I saw over the last 2 weeks, I could have bought them some real toys and not just their usual collection of handcuffs, leather harness, riding props, chains. Oh my. And I'm sure they'll have whatever they're using for their latest set. So we have the right concept, just not the proper implementation. And the story wasn't even half as bad as I've described in the above summary. Anyway, let's go to the ratings for these episodes and how they stacked up with our standard scoring rubric. 1/3 stars. Episode has 4. 2 stars overall, but this one is pretty bland too. Nothing really interesting except the fact there was another sex scene where she was being tied up again, which we haven't seen since episode 1. There were no real surprises, although we did get the return of that one older guy who apparently was supposed to have appeared way back at the beginning, but that was never filmed. This one also includes some more violence, but we didn't do anything different here. It seems like the showrunners had decided to include more action from the outset. But the story still seemed weak, and there was only a very slight attempt at humor to lighten things up at the end. It might have been nice to see her being used or abused in some way, but instead he uses an electric shocker, which was probably the only new piece of gear in the entire production that they managed to get, and just lets her fall asleep after. Not a particularly creative ending, but I suppose I shouldn't complain. There are a lot more stories and scripts available online now than there ever have been in any other time in human history. Takeaway. When making initial prompts, if you think of an off-the-cuff play on words like helpful bot and helpful femtalk, realize that you had inadvertently made your scenario into a porn whether you intended it or not. GPT and leaving well enough alone. Not likely. But I digress. This one was a little stronger, but it didn't come out as well as the previous episode, so it doesn't really help the overall series rating either. And they just announced the start of Series 7 for next year. So I think we can probably call this a wash so far. Although if it does better, we have the potential to move them up in a later year. But let's hope that they learn what works and stick to a script next season instead of winging the scenes. Episode #5. 3 stars overall for the first 3 and 1 star in the last one. So it goes to the end where the showrunner apparently decides there is only room for one woman on screen at once, even as she was using herself with 2 people at the same time. What kind of nonsense is that? I understand they need to be careful with how these scenarios turn out when they are written ahead of time, and sometimes they do end up needing another girl in addition to their protagonist, especially when the main girl ends up being in a threesome. But why would you make this into a 4-person sex party instead of the usual scenario of 2 women and a man? There could easily have been an entirely separate sex scene for Mary, where she gets gangbanged in all sorts of nasty ways, and maybe her partner gets tied up too, and they use some of the other implements on them too, just for a change of pace and variety in the series, and I'm assuming they're not going to use the other guy as he doesn't really seem interested in being in a sex club. Takeaway. And change Deeds to Finder's name. Or else you're probably gonna attend a Chippendales party. Or at the least, be seen as someone with questionable taste. Also, I've seen these movies before. I get how the show works. It's got lots of hot women having sex in some bondage, but they don't do any actual BDSM, or at least it never comes up. There's usually only one slave for every couple of guys unless it's some sort of special occasion. Plus the mistress, who is almost always dominant herself, with no other females present. Or so I've heard my mom describe it. She's the skinny Max fan. And I guess I should take what she has to say. She watches more porn than you do, which might be true by some definition if you consider a porn video being a person who's watching something, as well as some of those who view them on YouTube. But I guess that was all the way back in episode 2, so the series should have been done with it by now. I wonder if we need a rule here. If an entire series consists only of sex scenes that are not related to bondage and BDSM in any way. Takeaway. YouTube once showed porn. Where the web 2. Zeros of yesteryear. What is that site? It was like a combination of a social network and a porn site, all wrapped up with their own user-generated content. It must have vanished into the ether, like many great websites of today that never really had enough people viewing the videos in sufficient numbers for YouTube to start monetizing whatever it was, but now we'll never get that back. So instead, we're stuck watching a guy trying to sell porn videos to his parents over Thanksgiving break or whatever it is.
Okay, that's it. We can stop there.